This is one of the most beautiful and most vulnerable places on Earth. It's a string of 9 coral atolls, scattered like jewels in the vast blue of the South Pacific. A paradise home to a culture thousands of years old, and a people whose entire identity is woven into the land and the sea. This is Tuvalu. But it's sinking, and that's not a metaphor. We are witnessing the potential death of a country. A slow, silent demise driven by salt water that threatens to wipe an entire nation off the map. This isn't some far-off story about the future. It's happening right now. And it forces us to ask, what happens when a country's homeland vanishes beneath the waves? This is the scientific story of why Tuvalu is disappearing, and the human story of a culture's desperate, ingenious, and defiant fight to survive against impossible odds. Imagine waking up to find the ocean bubbling up from under your feet, not crashing over a seawall, but seeping up through the very ground you stand on. This is the reality for the people of Tuvalu, a nation of just over 11,500. During what they call king tides, seawater pushes up through the porous coral rock of the atolls, flooding homes, roads, and ancestral burial grounds. This salt water poisons the land, making it impossible to grow traditional crops like pulaka and taro, the bedrock of their diet for generations. The sea level here has risen nearly 6 inches in just the last 30 years, a rate nearly double the global average. Under some scientific projections, by 2050, half of the capital, Funafuti, could be flooded by these regular tides, and by 2100, over 90% of the country could be underwater. It's an existential countdown measured in millimeters per year. This is the front line of climate change, a crisis Tuvalu did almost nothing to create, yet whose ultimate price it may be the first to pay. Before we can understand what's being lost, we have to understand what's there. Tuvalu isn't just a collection of low-lying islands, it's a vibrant community bound by the principle of falepili, a word that means a sacred duty to care for, share with, and protect one another. It's a value that has defined Tuvaluan life for centuries, and now it guides their very struggle for survival. Life here moves to the rhythm of the tides. The culture is one of deep, practical connection to the environment. Generations have passed down the knowledge of how to read the sky, the currents, and the stars to navigate the ocean, when to plant, when to fish. This isn't folklore. It's a science of survival, perfected over millennia. The songs, dances, and stories all speak of the sea, not as an enemy, but as a provider, a source of life. The land, though incredibly scarce, is cherished. Every family has a connection to their specific piece of land, a place that holds their history, their ancestors, and their identity. The airport runway in Funafuti, a precious strip of pavement, famously doubles as the community's park, playground, and meeting spot in the evenings, a powerful symbol of how every square inch of dry land is vital. But this intimate relationship is now strained by a sense of betrayal. The very elements that sustain Tuvaluan culture are turning against it. The rising seas aren't just an environmental problem, they're an assault on identity. When salt water seeps into the freshwater lens beneath the islands, it's not just a water security issue, it's a threat to the food that is central to their culture. When erosion forces families to move, they aren't just relocating a building, they are retreating from their heritage. The emotional toll is immense. There's a concept in the Pacific called solastalgia, the distress caused by seeing your home change for the worse around you. It's a form of homesickness you feel when you're still at home, because the home you knew is disappearing before your eyes. It's the stress of watching your coastline shrink, the anxiety of every approaching storm, and the profound grief of watching your ancestral lands become uninhabitable. This is the daily reality in Tuvalu, a quiet trauma of a world slowly dissolving. But this isn't a story about passive victimhood, it's a story of resilience. It's about a people who, faced with the unimaginable, are refusing to be erased. They're fighting back, not with weapons, but with ingenuity, diplomacy, and a fierce determination to ensure that Tuvalu, and what it means to be Tuvaluan, will survive. To really get why Tuvalu is at the epicenter of this crisis, we have to look past the waves and into the complex science of our changing planet. The slow disappearance of Tuvalu isn't a single event, but a perfect storm of global forces and local geology. The main culprit, of course, is global sea level rise. As human activity pumps greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, the planet warms. That warming hits the oceans in two ways. First, thermal expansion. When water heats up, it takes up more space. With the sheer volume of the world's oceans, that adds up. Second, and increasingly, the melting of glaciers and ice sheets in places like Greenland and Antarctica is pouring trillions of tons of fresh water into the ocean. Globally, the sea level is rising about 3.9 millimeters a year. But it's not happening evenly, like filling a bathtub. Thanks to ocean currents, wind, and even gravity, sea levels rise faster in some places. The Western Pacific, where Tuvalu is one of those hot spots. NASA satellite data confirms the sea here is rising at almost double the global average, climbing about 15 centimeters or 6 inches in the last 30 years. But that's not even the whole story. Tuvalu's own geology makes it uniquely vulnerable. The nation is made of atolls, ring-shaped coral reefs. These aren't solid rock, they're porous structures made of ancient coral skeletons. That porosity is now a critical weakness. When the sea level rises, it's not just about bigger waves on the coast. The pressure from the rising ocean pushes salt water up from below, through the porous coral base of the islands themselves. This is why during king tides, water bubbles up eerily in the middle of villages, far from the beach. It's an invasion from within. This saltwater intrusion has a devastating domino effect. It contaminates the freshwater lens, a layer of fresh groundwater that naturally floats on top of the denser saltwater below. This lens is the main source of drinking water and is essential for farming. As the saltwater rises, it poisons this freshwater from the bottom up. On top of that, ocean acidification, another result of excess CO2, threatens the very foundation of the islands. As the ocean absorbs CO2, it becomes more acidic, which makes it harder for coral to build their skeletons. Healthy coral reefs can actually grow upwards and keep pace with slow sea level rise. But with weakened corals and rapidly rising seas, the atolls are losing their ability to maintain themselves. Now, some studies have shown that waves can sometimes deposit sediment and cause tiny parts of some islands to grow. This fact is occasionally used to dismiss the threat to Tuvalu, but that's a dangerously simplistic take. This growth is often on uninhabitable slivers of land and is nowhere near enough to offset the erosion and flooding happening in the places where people actually live. Suggesting this will save Tuvalu ignores the lived reality of people watching their homes, farms, and grave sites wash away. The climate crisis is squeezing Tuvalu from all sides. The ocean is rising around it, salt water is pushing up from beneath it, the coral that forms it is struggling to survive, and the weather above is becoming more violent. It's a slow-motion catastrophe with its most profound consequences being felt right here. Faced with a fate that seems unavoidable, you might expect a nation to despair, but Tuvalu is not despairing. It is engineering, it is building. It is in the middle of one of the most ambitious adaptation projects on the planet, a literal fight for every inch of dry land. The centerpiece of this effort is the Tuvalu Coastal Adaptation Project, or TCAP. This is a massive undertaking backed by the Green Climate Fund and partners like the UN Development Programme. The goal isn't just to build sea walls, which are often just a temporary fix. The goal is way more audacious, to reclaim and elevate land, creating new higher ground designed to stay safe from sea level rise through the year 2100. The process is a marvel of modern engineering. Specialized dredgers carefully extract sand from the lagoon floor in a precise operation, designed to minimize harm to the marine ecosystem. That sand, tens of thousands of cubic meters of it, is the raw material for survival. It's then piped ashore to build up new land. On the capital island of Funafuti, the project has already created over 7 hectares, about 18 acres, of new elevated territory. This new land sits much higher than the surrounding areas, a man-made plateau of hope. It's fortified with features like massive sand-filled geotextile bags to create a resilient new coastline that can absorb the power of storm waves. And this isn't just empty space, it's a lifeline. It's a place to move homes, schools, hospitals, and critical infrastructure currently in the path of the floods. As of mid-2025, the project is deep into its second phase, creating another 8 hectares of resilient land. The work is relentless, a race against time scheduled to be completed by the end of 2025 and handed over to the government by mid-2026. But this brilliant solution has its own immense challenges. First, the cost is staggering, funded by tens of millions of dollars from international climate funds that Tuvalu could never raise on its own. It highlights a brutal injustice. The nations least responsible for climate change are facing adaptation costs that dwarf their national budgets. Second, there are environmental trade-offs. Dredging the lagoon, even carefully, impacts the marine environment. It's a painful compromise. To save the land, parts of the sea must be sacrificed. And third, the scale is daunting. Creating 15 hectares of new land is incredible, but this process can't be replicated across every one of Tuvalu's islands. The TC app is a lifeline, but it can't save everything. It's a strategic retreat to higher ground, a consolidation of the nation onto fortified land. This physical battle is a testament to Tuvalu's resolve. They aren't just waiting for the water, they are actively building their way out of the crisis. But it also raises a profound, difficult question that every Tuvaluan must grapple with. If you can only save part of your country, which parts do you let go? And what happens to the memories tied to the land you leave behind? This incredible fight to save the physical land forces us all to ask, what truly makes a country? Is it just the ground beneath your feet, or is it the people, the culture, and the shared idea of a nation? Let us know what you think in the comments. What does sovereignty mean in a world where a nation's territory can literally disappear? While Tuvalu wages a physical war against the sea, it's also planning for a future where that war might be lost. But this part of the story isn't about retreat. What if a nation could exist even if its physical territory was gone? This isn't science fiction. This is the audacious, groundbreaking, and deeply poignant plan for Tuvalu to become the world's first digital nation. Announced to the world by Tuvalu's then Foreign Minister Simon Kofe while standing knee-deep in the sea, the Future Now project is a radical act of self-preservation. The plan is to create a digital twin of Tuvalu in the metaverse, a complete virtual replica of the country. This isn't just a website, it's an all-out effort to upload an entire nation to the cloud. Using technology like 3D LiDAR scanning, every island, islet, building and tree is being meticulously mapped and recreated in a virtual space. They've already completed detailed scans of all 124 islands and islets that make up the country, forming the foundation of this digital territory. But a nation is more than geography. The project's second, more important goal is to create a living cultural archive. They are digitizing everything that makes Tuvalu unique. The language, the stories of the elders, traditional songs and dances, family photos, historical documents. It's an attempt to build a digital ark so a Tuvaluan child born in another country decades from now can still walk through a virtual version of their ancestral home and hear the stories of their culture. The third pillar of this strategy is the most revolutionary, transitioning the functions of a sovereign state into a digital space. This involves creating digital passports and a system for digital identity so that Tuvaluans, wherever they are, could still participate in the life of their nation, voting in elections, registering births, and conducting government business online. It would allow the government of Tuvalu to continue to function, serve its citizens, and maintain its political identity even without a physical capital. This whole concept directly challenges international law, which has long defined a state as needing four things: a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and the ability to deal with other states. Tuvalu is getting ahead of the defined territory problem. In a world-first move, Tuvalu amended its constitution in 2023 to declare that its statehood is permanent and will persist, notwithstanding the impacts of climate change. Now they have to get the rest of the world to agree. Tuvalu is on a diplomatic mission to get international recognition for its digital sovereignty. As of late 2023, 26 countries had already signed on, including all members of the Pacific Islands Forum. It's a crucial fight for precedent. If the world recognizes Tuvalu's right to exist without land, it could create a legal pathway for other low-lying nations facing a similar fate. The digital nation is a plan born of heartbreaking necessity. It raises huge legal and philosophical questions. But for Tuvalu, it's the ultimate backup plan, a way to ensure that even if the water takes their land, it will not take their nation. The fate of Tuvalu is a message in a bottle for the rest of the world because they are not alone. It tells us that climate change isn't a distant threat. It is here now, erasing nations. Across the globe, other low-lying countries face the same existential countdown. In the Pacific, the Marshall Islands, with an average elevation of just 2 meters, faces catastrophic flooding that threatens to contaminate water sources and make its capital, Majuro, uninhabitable. For a country where a 1-meter sea level rise would inundate 40% of the buildings in its capital, every millimeter is a measure of survival. Neighboring Kiribati is in a similar state of emergency. Rising seas are causing severe coastal erosion and saltwater intrusion that poisons fresh water and soil, leading to food insecurity. Entire villages have already been forced to relocate inland, only to find there is little high ground left. The Solomon Islands have witnessed this crisis become a reality. 5 of its reef islands have already been completely submerged by the rising ocean, a direct result of sea levels in the region rising at more than double the global average. On other islands, entire villages have been washed away, forcing hundreds to flee their ancestral homes. And in the Indian Ocean, the Maldives faces its own profound threat. With over 80% of its land less than a meter above sea level, projections show the entire nation could be submerged by 2100. The country is already battling severe erosion on 90% of its islands and has lost most of its fresh groundwater, all while its protective coral reefs are being decimated by warming seas. The struggle of these small island developing states is our collective call to action. The story of Tuvalu is our planet's climate emergency, compressed into 10 square miles of coral and sand. It's a story of profound loss, of a paradise being unmade by a crisis it had almost no hand in creating. We've seen the science of how a warming world is causing an invasion of saltwater from below, and we've seen the human cost, the poisoned farms, the threatened homes, the constant anxiety of an uncertain future. But to see Tuvalu only as a victim is to miss the point entirely. This is a nation that refuses to be defined by its vulnerability. We've seen a people fighting back with breathtaking courage. They are fighting in the mud and sand with dredgers and giant bags, literally building new land to stand on. And they are fighting in the ones and zeros of the digital world, constructing a virtual ark to carry their culture, their identity, and their statehood into the future. This dual strategy is now supported by a third, a path for its people. In a landmark deal called the Falepili Union Treaty, Australia has formally recognized Tuvalu's permanent statehood and has committed to helping it adapt. Crucially, the treaty also creates a pathway for 280 Tuvaluans each year to migrate to Australia with dignity, not as climate refugees, but as residents with the right to work and study. The visa program is expected to be operational in 2025. When the first visa lottery opened, the number of applicants was overwhelming, a stark sign of the deep desire for a secure future. This treaty is a vital lifeline, but it also captures the tragic choice Tuvalu faces: stay and fight on shrinking fortified land, preserve your identity in a digital world, or leave the homeland you love for a new life on a foreign shore. None of these are easy paths. All of them are fraught with loss. The spirit of Falepili, of caring for one another, is what guides Tuvalu. Perhaps the world needs to learn that word. The question is no longer if we will face these consequences, but how we will face them together. Will we watch as nations are washed away? Or will we find the will to fight for a future where every country, no matter how small, has a right to exist? The future of Tuvalu hangs in the balance, suspended between the rising ocean and the peak of human ingenuity. Their story is not over. It is a lingering question posed to all of us, and the final chapter is yet to be written.